Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today I wanted to answer one of your questions. One that is highly relevant and really important for those of you who have never thought about it, to maybe start considering, understanding, and seeing how astrology may be relevant in your perspective and your experience. So the question was to ask me to speak about astrology. But for me, before I can actually talk to you in depth about astrology, I thought it would be more relevant, more pertinent to explain why astrology is even relevant to begin with. And here I have to make a distinction between the astrology you see in the newspaper or the astrology you see on a magazine, in a magazine and things like that. Things that are not necessarily related to the planets, their position, their actual position in space. What I am talking here is the ancient science and spirituality of astrology. Astrology used to be combined with another science called astronomy. Today, the astronomy we know today is the science of the studies of the planets and the astros in space. This has been divorced from astrology, which is a spiritual aspect of it. So, astrology should be relevant to you, especially if you're living in the northern hemisphere, North America, Europe, Russia, or any other parts. It should be relevant to you because the influence of astrology can be seen, can be experienced. And even when you live in the southern hemisphere, if you just care to observe, to learn, you will see that astrology has an influence all around you. But be careful. It's not because you are not personally affected that astrology doesn't work or doesn't matter. Astrology, you have to understand that astrology is not determinative, is not fatic or decisive. It is rather prescriptive. It brings you and tells you about the influences that are present on the planet, the energies that are present on the planet. Not everyone has the same sensitivity. You can be born the same day, even on the same hour with someone else, and have a completely different sensitivity towards energies, towards spirits, and what have you. The reason why astrology becomes relevant to you is that you can understand how people are behaving around you. If you take the retrograde, for example, when Mercury goes retrograde, let's say, Mercury is the planet that rules communication, that influences our form of communication, all forms of communication. When the planet goes retrograde, it means that it is actually backtracking, it is moving in reverse. And during that period of time, where the planet is actually going backwards, it continues to have an influence on us, on the Earth. Of course, it also depends on how close the planet is to the Earth at the time, how far it is, etc. But if you observe the Mercury retrograde period, you may start noticing things. Maybe it's your computer that has glitches. Maybe you thought you sent an email that never left, but you could have swear that you sent it. Maybe it's a client that misunderstood what you said or what you wrote. It could be all kinds of things dealing with communication. Oftentimes people attribute it to negative things. Many people attribute to negative things, like the computer breaking down, communication issue, misunderstanding, what have you. But it doesn't necessarily need to be. Sometimes it is also something that's positive. It means bringing back something up. It may be some unfinished business. All of a sudden, an ex-boyfriend you haven't heard from for years and years just shows up. Just out of the blue calls you. Or you run into him somewhere unexpectedly. could be another girlfriend, an ex-wife, what have you. Somebody, something from the past is brought back. It's brought back forward so that you can assess it, so that you can deal with it, and so that you can have an opportunity to close a chapter. So this is why sometimes it's better for those of you, if you felt like you didn't have closure on something, or on a situation, or with someone, instead of trying to provoke it and force some type of conclusion, just let it go. And when the retrograde comes around, you will see if an opportunity is presented to you for you to deal with that. And oftentimes, if it doesn't present itself, that means it's not time for you to deal with it, or you need not deal with it. So you can just relax, sit back, and deal with the challenges you have at hand. Start working, keep working on yourself and the other things that you have to do. So when you start seeing people acting a certain way, and not understanding why you may being so misunderstood all of a sudden, why maybe things that you're trying to do are not working, just pick up a calendar or go on the net and look at where the planet Mercury is currently and what it is doing. This will help you understand so many things and avoid you so much frustration. Instead of getting angry and trying relentlessly to be understood, to be heard, you will simply understand that the influences currently on the planet is showing you that it is not a good time for this type of communication. So Mercury retrograde is also a perfect time for you to prepare, to do research, to perfect something you're working on. If you're working on a project, to tie loose ends, to make the finishing touches to whatever you're doing. But is it usually not a moment to release something to the public, or to release a new product or something like that? Simply because of the influence that's currently there, and that many people, there may be a lot of miscommunication. So you often hear people tell you to hold on. If you want to launch a product, they will tell you hold on. And many advisors have astrologers working with them, astronomists working with them, to advise them on what to do with their business. When is the best time to sign this contract? When is the best time to launch a product, based on the influences that are present on the earth, on the planet. And most people who don't know anything about astrology, who think it's just, the little column in the newspaper or in the magazine that's always wrong, where they never see themselves in whatever is saying for their sign, anything like that. If you're looking at astrology that way, yes, you're never going to understand it. But if you start expanding yourself and going to the actual traditional aspect of it, how the planets have been said and observed for years and years and years. This is not something that somebody just came up with today and started making up stuff. These are things that have been observed, tested through time. This is what distinguishes traditions from your little want and needs, your little trends, where something becomes all of a sudden popular and then goes back to the shadows, goes back to oblivious. Tradition is what resists the test of time. It is true now. It has been true 100 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago. That's what makes it tradition. If it doesn't pass the test of time, it's not going to be part of a tradition. It's not going to be kept. It's not going to be used. It's not going to be transmitted. And observation about the planets, about their influences on people, have been observed and observed for time and time again. Now, the only reason why it is not scientific in the sense that you think of it, when you think about doing math, or the way you think about when you're reading books, I may do a little parenthesis here. I know many of you keep sending me, I receive messages over messages asking me for books. What books can I read? Where can I read this? And where can I get more information and stuff like that? I would say that I come from an oral tradition, so there is no book. There is no MlleCammy book. There is no book that will help you understand African spirituality. You cannot understand it by reading a book. Anyone that tells you otherwise is lying to you. The only way you will understand African spirituality is by doing it, is by living it. Hearing, speaking, and doing. Not reading, not watching. Well, watching is observing, yes. And so the best way for you to learn is to be in nature, is to be interacting with others. This is how you grow your sense of empathy, by interacting with others, testing your own empathy, nourishing it, developing it. The way you learn about astrology is not about reading books about astrology. And there are many, many out there from all kind of traditions, from all kind of perspectives. Because each community that put in the work of observing the planet, observe it from their own angle, from their location, their geographical location. So the world seems a certain way to them. And they have a specific prism from their own community, their own culture, their own ethnic group, on how they view things and how the harmony of the world is being set up or perceived. So they will have their own, and this is why sometimes when you look at astrology from different traditions, they're not quite the same, because they don't have quite the same principle at the core. They don't have quite the same perspective of the core. Perspective comes from their culture. It comes from how they view the world and how they feel the world. And it's not because it's different that one of them is wrong and another one is right. You have to get out of that paradigm in comparing cultures and assessing what may be best and anything like that. What you need to do is that if you are looking for a specific astrological tradition, go into that tradition and see how they view the world. It will make a lot more sense for you to understand how the tradition of astrology or astronomy has been developed, what they're coming out of it, how they're using it. In many traditions, they use astrology in terms of looking at if you have personality compatibility for marriage. To look about your own personality and position to see what is the best career for you. So the things that you may not have been able to tell your parents while you were in the womb or in the spirit form, you may have other ways to remember them by looking at astrology. But you have to look at it from your location, meaning that if you look at the place where you were born, so that will give you your chart and all those things, but then you look at the culture and the tradition that's there, where you were born, not a million miles away, exactly where you were born, and you look at the people who live there. And so this is why when people come here and start telling me, I don't have a culture, I don't know anything about myself. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. If I was able to look in the US or in France or in everywhere else in diaspora and find traditions that have been there for hundreds and thousands of years, so can you. And those traditions provide you with some perspective about what has been observed over centuries. And so instead of looking far away to some land you don't even know anything about, start at home. Start where you were born. And so astrology comes in not to fill in the blanks. Astrology comes in to help you look at what may be influencing you. It's giving you pointers in terms of also as much as it gives you the things about the qualities that you may be able to develop, it oftentimes also gives you things about the things that may be important for you to look at. That may be your flaws. So in your self-improvement, in your self-development, astrology may guide you, may help you to look at the things you need to work on, to pay attention to the things that may be detrimental to you or less beneficial. And it also helps you look at the things that you may be able to develop with a lot of easiness. And that's for you to look at. There's still work that needs to be put in. It's not a roadmap and you just follow and you just, I don't have to work anymore. I know I'm a good analytic person. Then I'm just going to wait for this job to just create itself and come to me. No. You still have to seek out those opportunities or create them for yourself. And I thought it was an interesting question because if you look today, there are so many different ways and books about astrology that, yes, you will be confused. This is what I'm saying. Start with where you were born. And then if you want to have a little bit of fun, they can then see in different tradition what they're saying about your chart, your birth chart with or where you're born. Look in a different tradition to see what they're saying. But start first at home. Look at what is being said about what is being said by the tradition where you were born, in the places you were born. And if you find anything about your town or your little ethnic group or anything like that, then expand it to your state, to your country, to your hemisphere, your region. And then once you have that information and you look at it and you see where you recognize yourself, where you don't, then you can go across in other traditions and see what other traditions are saying as well. And like I said before, it's important for me to underline this. It is not determinative, meaning it's not because it says astrology that all Virgo are this way, that you as a Virgo will be that way. It only helps you see what the influences were during your birth, and then how these influences can manifest and portray and intensify or weaken throughout your experience and throughout your life. So when you're looking at that, it may give you answer. When you're wondering what's going on, it may look you answer to know what are the planets doing and where are the planets. And I'll end this video in saying, find your personal astrologer or astronomer. There are plenty of YouTube channels that talk about astrology, that provide forecasting, all these kind of things. I'm not telling you to become an addict to those channels and anything like that, but I'm saying look at a few of those channels and see who resonate with you. Today we have the incredible chance to have people who share their knowledge with us for free on the internet, on YouTube notably. And it's just up to you to find someone that resonates, that you resonate with. And the easiest way for you to see is this person really resonating with you? Go and look at the video that's done in the past. And I think it's one of the best ways for you to validate if you are really in the same vibration as that particular person in terms of the influences that affect your particular experience. So you look at a few months back, however backwards you want to go to see what they said, and you see if she was right or if he was right, if the influences is talking about is actually what you experienced that month, that year, so forth and so on. And if you find someone who's really in sync with that, then you may continue to look at them in the forecast and what's to come. So when you're doing your planning, your regular plannings, that means it's not something that's coming in to, completely change your life. It's something that you're gonna include in how you're planning. Meaning, if they're forecasting that if they're forecasting a really beneficial period for you to sign contracts, try as much as you can to put your new contract to be signed in that period. And yes, it's not going to work every time. Sometimes there will be meetings, there will be things that you will have to do out of sync with the information that's provided. And that's okay. The important is that you try your best, change the things that you can change and accept the things that you cannot. And use that to your advantage to plan the things that you need to do ahead of time, and to include and be aware of the challenges that may be coming, the energies that may be a little bit more frustrating than others, so that instead of being frustrated, you can just lean back and say, oh, okay, I knew that was coming. You can prepare yourself for those things. And while others are panicking, not understanding what's going on, talking about bad luck or what else, you will have that inner knowledge, that greater understanding about what is going on, and you will be able to look at things a lot more calmer, because you will already understand what is unfolding and what you need to be doing at that moment. So I hope this was useful for those of you who were really new to astrology, who wondered about it, and who were curious about it. Astrology is not satanic. It's not about demons or anything like that. It's just about looking at where the planets that are around Earth are and what they're doing, in which direction they're moving, what is going on up there. Because as we say, as above, so below. What's going on in space affects what we are doing here on Earth. And just being aware, having knowledge about that, is helpful because it will help you understand some of the things that you may be experiencing or observing on others or yourself. And if you do have experiences about astrology that you would like to share, please let me know in the comments. Share with others that are new so they can better understand astrology and see how this may be useful to them. And until then, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.